Hi, this is Chris, host of CT Small Business Presents, where we get to know your favorite Connecticut small businesses, as well as the ones you may not know. We get to know their passions, their business, their story. Thanks for listening, and let's get into the episode. Daniel Greenwolf.
That's me.
Mr. Greenwolf, how are you?
I am alive and kicking. Thank you for asking.
Definitely.
And we're not alone here in the room right now. We're not.
We have my boy John.
Hey, everybody.
What's up, John?
Mm.
And I got Lou, who runs the lovely Royal Fox Studios. So if you want to have a podcast, reach out to Lou. It'd be appreciated.
This is very pretty. I like this in here. I think I've been in a couple of podcast studios before in the past, like, you know, and even even radio studios, all stuff. I like this. It's nice. I like the color. It just feels.
Yeah,
I feel safe. I feel safe inside.
Yeah.
Anyways,
it seems so like close, relaxed,
Exactly. This is like a 5-star hotel quality studio right
there
here.
you go. It's got the couch up there. It's lovely.
I'm waiting for Lou to hand us like a after dinner menu.
It's always the good way to go.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I was here a couple weeks ago, and we were talking a little bit. And I was just like, I just didn't want to leave.
Yeah.
It was just so relaxed,
Well, we're going to fix all that. All
yeah,
right, here
got
we go.
that right.
No, so much for relaxation.
Yeah.
You got a ginger and a kilt. Let's go.
Got that right. So actually, one of the reasons why I want to have you on today, because in a couple of weeks, it's the Midsummer
Fantasy Renaissance Fair. It's not your fault. I really wish I had a shorter name, but we don't, because we wanted to get all these different aspects in there. And when we started the Midsummer, it actually wasn't the Midsummer Fantasy Renaissance Fair at first. I'm the co-owner now.
Yeah.
For those who are listening, I'm the co-owner of the Midsummer Fantasy Renaissance Fair. I found Artifact Entertainment that owns the fair, and other ones, which I'll talk about in a bit. But this was the one that started the ship that sailed 1,000 ships, I guess.
And it's actually the 10th year.
This is the 10th season, the 12th year. Thanks, Apocalypse. We're kind of treating it like Final Fantasy X-2.
Yeah.
Because we had a one-day event last year. To just keep everybody going, because we obviously like the rest of the universe, we closed in 2020, and then in 2021 we said we wanted to. When I talked to my people, we have a team of about 100 improv actors, 20 acts from all over the country, 50 to 70 artisan vendors, and there's food vendors and all these amazing people that make this fair work over the course of 3 weekends. And we polled them. Because my management team, we got about 14 to 15 people on our management team, because there's different sections that have to be taken care of. The food vendors, regular vendors, the trash, all these things have to have different people. We have a pub, that has to have its own manager. And what happened was that I literally polled them, and we said, do you feel comfortable running a Renaissance Fair this year? And there were other Ren fairs in our area even that were running full steam ahead. And there was a lot of people who were uncomfortable. And when we did our polling of our people, it was literally right down the line. 50% of them said, I'm not really comfortable with this. 50% of them said, let's go and do this thing. And that middle ground was a lot of people saying, if you did it or didn't do it, we would support wherever your decision was. And we listened to that. We're like, what if we did a one-day concert-style event, limited to ticket sales? We had I think it was 600 or 700 people. So it wasn't a big sale, but we sold out the tickets. Yeah. And we had a few of the acts, like 8 or 9 of the acts, including myself, from all over the country come on in. A couple of vendors, like 10 vendors. But and we didn't charge the vendors because we're like, we don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. We have no idea. But it was a great time. It was a good event. And what really made it work was just that, like I said, we talked to our people. Because I've seen that a lot with a lot of festivals and fairs. They don't even listen. They don't even take the chance to be like, hey, what do you think? And I think that's something that, crossing fingers, that has made it work for us over the years.
I actually went last year. I remember it was raining out.
Yep.
So people still came out in the rain.
They did. It's funny. We had about I want to say 75 no-shows, because it was all pre-sale tickets. But that was it.
People, they came. They had tents. They sat in the rain. They sat in the rain in their chairs.
Oh yeah, it was. It was like Coachella without all the drugs.
Yeah, in the previous ones, I can actually say, because when I go places, I ask the staff and the volunteers, and like they're always taken care of, and it's always hot. Like, usually like 90 degrees. And, well, some of them like, they make sure I get water. They pass out fruit, and I still remember pre-pandemic, unfortunately.
Yep.
I remember seeing volunteers running around with water, making sure everyone was okay, taken care of.
Yep. We created back in the early days of our vendor coordinators. We have our vendor coordinator now is Holly Irving. She's amazing and does an astonishing job. But early on, we knew, our fair runs the last weekend of June, first 2 weekends of July. We're always right in that area. And man, how many times have I looked at those temperatures? You see 90, 95 degrees. In our early years, and this is with us doing what we're doing now, we had 14 ambulance visits because it was so hot. And not with our people. It was almost always the patrons, because the patrons, they don't know. Like, we hammered into our people. We're like...
Mind you, you also... I didn't mean to cut you off, but you're also in full gear.
Oh, yeah.
So there's people that are, like, in, like, trench coats and, like...
Oh, yeah, basically.
They're not, in, like, heavy, like... clothing.
Yeah, they look like stainless steel baked potatoes because they're just all full. Yeah, a couple of our acts, they just go all out in our actors. And what happened was that we came up with a position called what we call vendor fairies. And what they are is they're a couple of people that go around to all of our vendors, not even just our acts, because our actors and our improvisational folks and our people who work like the pickle booth and stuff, but like the vendors, make sure they have food, make sure they have water, because again, it comes into the thing of like, yes, they paid us to be there. So why do we want to make the experience for them any less fulfilling or any less enjoyable than we possibly make it? I can't control how many people are going to come through the gate. I can't control if it's going to rain, but I can control if these people are going to have water and food for the time that they're there, And that generally keeps vendors coming back. That's the idea.
Yeah, I go every time. It's majority of it's in a good way. It's a lot of the same vendors. Like the Spice Lady, what's her name?
Oh, Auntie Arlen.
Auntie Arlen. She's always there.
Yeah, she will be back this year. Yeah. But I do find interesting though, and this is something that the upside and the downside of the pandemic, right? The upside is that during the pandemic, a lot of people said, I don't want to work a regular 9 to 5. I have a skill that I've never tapped into. And so they started a vendor booth. They said, I can vend for and then they started doing fairs and festivals and they opened up again. But the downside is there's a lot of vendors who were like, I can't make it work. I can't do it. I took a regular job, whatever. I've closed up shop. So the nice thing about our fair this year is that we've got a lot of new vendors in. It's a good number of the vendors we've had for a long time. We've got a whole bunch of new vendors because these are people that are trying their hand. And there's other Renaissance fairs out there that, because they're not a fantasy fest, because we're very big on being a Renaissance fantasy fair. And the reason why is because this way, when someone walks in and they see, not period tents, they're like these vendors, they get a pop-up and stuff, and they make it look pretty or whatever. But, there's other rent fairs that are like, it must be a rope tie and canvas tent, and those things cost thousands of dollars.
A lot of money.
Yeah. So we tell those vendors, we go, hey, come on in. Enjoy the fair, be a part. You got to dress up the part, but you can dress up real easy, as a vendor. And we make sure that the vendors all match the theme, the aesthetic of the fair. Not you're not going to see don't be any Tupperware parties being sold at our fair. But what you get is this just this really great energy of this experimental side from the vendors and from us, and it gives us a chance to try things that other fairs wouldn't even dare to try. So.
For years past, I've never seen or even heard of a negative experience from just watching. And I ask.
Oh yeah.
I tend to ask a lot of questions and like, oh, how do you like it and this and that, but not once.
We do appreciate it. Like, you're always going to get people.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell you this story. So we have a front gate manager. She's amazing. And actually, this is our former front gate manager. We have a new one taken over this year. But so they come up to us for morning meeting. Every morning before fair opens, we get everybody together and we say, okay, guys, here's what we got to do. Here's the things we got to look out for. And the front gate manager says, can I tell a story? I go, yeah, sure. She says, we had a refund yesterday. I go, oh, that's a bummer. What's up? She goes, yeah, we had a refund. The woman came up to the front gate and she said, I want my money back. And you go, why? Well, that's fine. Of course, we don't normally do refunds, but like this woman seemed very upset. She goes, well, what was the issue? And the woman goes, this is all fake. It's all fake. Those weren't real fairies. These aren't real knights. They're all fake. They're all acting. Without a shred of irony, this woman was very upset that we weren't really the Renaissance. And so my front gate manager said, you were expecting real fairies and elves? Like, did you? And the woman's like, yeah, you're all fake. And my front gate smartly, she's like, here's your money back. Have a lovely day, and send her on her way. But it was so, but that was for a couple of years. That was our thing. We'd just be like, all right, remember, folks, you're all fake. All of you. You're all liars. You're all fake. Oh, my God. Yeah, but, you can't please 100% of the people. Yeah. But we do our damnedest to get as many people as possible.
It's actually very interactive. Even at the gate, it actually, as you're walking in, it's very interactive. The people actually, like, outside the gate, making sure you're in, are all playing the part of their job,
Yeah, you got to. I mean, these are folks. I mean, listen, we're not a big company. We can't pay people a whole ton of money or anything like that. So it's got to be for the love of the game, because there's no reason that you're going to stand out there in 90-degree weather if you're not having some kind of a good time.
Yeah, what I can also say too is I always bring extra money at the tip, because a lot of it, like you said, some of them actors, actually, that's their full-time job.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what's his name? Shakespeare Approves?
Yep, Shakespeare Approves, Dan Kostlik. Although, funny enough, Dan Kostlik, and this is congratulations to him, he's not going to be at the fair this year, and one of the reasons is that he has accepted the position of entertainment director for the Scarborough Renaissance Festival down in Texas. One of the biggest fairs in the world, and he's the entertainment director for them down there. I would never do that. He's insane, but I love him because I can't listen. I'm an entertainment director for a 3-weekend Renaissance fair, and now Found Artifact in October. We're going to be opening the Delaware Renaissance Fair, so it'll be 3 weekends in October as well, and that's the same company. We're going to be connecting with folks down there. Totally different thing, but like. I could never do this for a 3-month fair with that gets 350,000 people through the gate. Like I couldn't even fathom that.
I follow him on Facebook. Like that guy's like nonstop.
Oh yeah.
Like you see him one week he's in Louisiana. One day he's in like upstate New York, and like
man,
he's generally entertaining. Like nonstop. It's all entertainment.
I love him, and he's good, and he's a good human too. And sometimes you're faced with tough business decisions that you have to make, and you never want to burn bridges whenever you can, but sometimes people force you into these corners, and he got forced into a corner rather recently, but he handled it as well as he could, and I give him all the credit in the world, because it's tough stuff. And then of course, like I said, now he's going to do a great job as the entertainment director of Scarborough, and I'm proud of him, because we've known each other. I've known him for I think over a decade easily. In fact, he was our second Shakespeare. And there's a story I love to tell about him, is that our first Shakespeare, his name was Duncan Inches, and he was an older man. If you think of Shakespeare, you close your eyes, you picture Shakespeare. This man looked like Shakespeare. He spoke like Shakespeare. He looked like him. Dan looks like a young Shakespeare.
Yeah,
like
he definitely
does. He'll appreciate I said young Shakespeare. But this man, he was older and he looked like it. And he passed away, and a performer's death in the middle of touring. He was in Florida on the beach in his camper van, and he passed away. And it's the way he would have wanted to go. And I was like, it'd be great to have Dan to be our new Shakespeare. And I didn't reach out to him because I figured he was busy and stuff. And then a year went by, and I think it was like a second year went by, and I said, Dan, I called him up. I go, Dan, I want you to be Shakespeare for our festival. And he didn't call us because he didn't want to disrespect the memory of Duncan by saying, I want to be Shakespeare at your fair. That's the kind of guy that he was. And so I was like, you're in forever. You're an amazing human being. And that's the kind of people that we try to bring in for the fair, not just as acts, but just as people, toxic humans, they weed themselves out rather quickly most of the time. True. Theatrically speaking, there's some more of them than others. They still last around. There's a lot of ickiness around, especially in the Ren Fair world, and in the entertainment world in general. There's a lot of icky humans, but I'm glad that we've managed to work on making it a safer space for people.
Yeah,
yeah.
It definitely every year. It's like I said before. It's always like feels positive. You know, like I never felt like one negative like experience, or like you could tell no one, if someone's in a bad mood, you can't tell. You know,
we got to leave at the door. I mean, at the end of the day, we understand that no matter what's going on in our lives, and I went, I successfully completed a marriage, and during my divorce, I was still running the fair, and man, let me tell you, it's hard to like look at people who are like smiling, ready to go, and you're like, I just want to be no people. Can I be no people?
Exactly.
I actually hired, because I was a general manager at the time, and I hired an assistant general manager, Jim Meyer, who's now the general manager. I'm now co-owner, and I hired him specifically. And I told him, I said, "Here's the deal. I know that if in my headspace right now, I'm gonna go ape on somebody. I'm gonna mess somebody up by accident. Please be the human meat shield, so I don't spew all of my anger, divorcee hate at somebody." And he did a great job of it. But you gotta remember, it's so hard to keep that from spilling over, right? Especially when something so prolifically horrible is going on in your life. You know? Even though you get a pass, I notice this all the time. I got a 1 year pass. They're like, "You're going through divorce. It's okay." Like everybody said, they're like, "I get it, man. I get it." And I was like, "No, I'm fine. Everything's fine." And then, like, I don't know, 4 months in, they're like, "No, it's okay, man. You're gonna be all right. It's okay." I'm like, "I not be okay." So sorry. Anyways,
I was talking to John yesterday. I told him to come. You know, we were talking about this interview, and I was telling him I would love to know what like little Daniel Greenwolf was like. If like if you're like 10 years old, you're like wearing a kilt, you know.
Well, you know what? It's funny. I started magic when I was 10 years old. And I saw a magician on TV named Jeff McBride. He is, in fact, you can still find, if you look up World's Greatest Magic 2, Jeff McBride, it was on NBC. They always had him on like Thanksgiving Eve or something like that. For some reason, it was always the night before, the night of Thanksgiving. And there were 5 specials. And this was number 2. And Jeff McBride came on. And I was always a fan of magic. I'd seen some of the older Copperfield specials and, but Jeff McBride came on. And he had this act with masks and cards, and he was like kind of dressed almost like almost like a fantasy character. Like it's almost kind of like a Lord of the Rings kind of vibe to him in terms of his outfit. And and I know it was my little kid brain, amplifying things, but like he had a bigger standing like ovation. Like everybody clapped so much louder for him than any other act in the show. And there were great acts in that show. You had Penn and Teller on there. You had so many amazing acts. Matt King, so many great acts. But for some reason in my head, it stuck in me that this weird out there act got such an ovation. And my little 10-year-old brain said, I'm going to do that for the rest of my life. And that's what happened. Then, I joined a couple of different things. My parents were always weird. I'm a second generation Wiccan. It's for those who don't know, that's a polytheistic religion that focuses primarily in nature. We're called witches generally. And so my parents were Wiccan, and I was one of the few second generation Wiccans that, could speak full sentences. A lot of times they're like, "This is my baby moon child," but I was at least a preteen at the time. My parents had been that since like the 60s. So when I started going magic, everybody else was like, "I want to do magic with birds, and I want to do like weird, creepy stories and talk about like all this kind of strange stuff." And so I joined when I was 13. I joined the Inner Circle of Bizarre Magic, which is this group of magicians, because my mentor Joe Lantieri, who brought me into it, and basically it was like magicians who want to tell weird stories and do magic. And so that's what first started me off on that path. And then the other thing was when I was 12, I believe, my parents took me to the New York Renaissance Fair. And my family, we all went to the New York Renaissance Fair. One of the biggest fairs in the country. It's up in Tuxedo Park, New York, still going on. And they've been going on for 30, 40 years, a massive number of time. And I remember stepping into that fair. And I didn't know what was going to be the deal. I didn't know. I'd never been to one of these before. And it was another universe. Like, this is what they call a hard site fair. So they've built buildings, they've built stuff. Ours is a soft site. We set up, we do our fair for 3 weekends, we break down, and then it's like we never existed. But this fair is there all year round. The buildings are there all year round. They do the fair for a couple of months. So to walk into this world, and I always say, I always tell our people for our fair, I go, it inspired me. It inspired my imagination. And that's the goal that we do with our fair, and anything that we do is to inspire imagination, kind of our motto, as it were. And that just started. And the first guy I saw, one of the first acts, his name was Magical Mystical Michael. He was a magician who worked there, and he was just one guy on a stage. It wasn't like Copperfield or Lance Burton or any of these guys, all this stuff. He was a guy standing on stage telling jokes and doing what we call stand-up magic. So he didn't have big boxes or other people, just him with like fruit and like razor blades and doing all this other cool stuff. And he was holding an entire audience, captivated. And that was the other part of it. I'm like, I could do this for a living. I could do this. Yeah. So 14 years old. I didn't have a kilt at this point. In fact, I was 355 pounds.
Were you?
I was a big boy. Yeah. I was a big boy. In fact, until I was in my 20s, I was over 350. Which is another story. But what happened was I started writing to all these different Ren fairs that were around me. What was the closest Ren fairs? I wrote to the Connecticut Renaissance Fair. I wrote to him. The guy's like, oh, maybe he brushed me off. He's like, whatever, kid, get out of here. I wrote to a couple of these fairs. I wrote to one fair. I knew the owners, and they're like, maybe not this year, maybe next year. And then they did bring me in the next year. But this one fair, Festival of the Lion in Grafton, Massachusetts, run by a guy named Al Fairbrother, who has since passed on. It was a Lions Club. We did a one-weekend festival. And the guy says, I'm like, I'm a young magician. I want to work Renaissance fairs. Never worked them before, but I'll work in the lanes. I'll do what we call busking, which is where you stand there and you try to hawk for money, but you don't even have a stage time. And Al goes, I'll give you stage time, and I'll even pay you $80 for the weekend. $80. Let me tell you something. 14, back then, I'm like, $80, sign me up.
Yeah,
My goodness, I'm a star now.
Yeah.
And I remember the next year I go, and he looks at me, he says, you did a good job. Next year I'll pay you $100. Like he knew what he was doing. But that's where it started for me, is where I saw all of this possible, and it never occurred to me. That was the thing. And I think this is something that, I don't know if this is a business point or just a good general point when it comes to, like, if you're surrounded by people who are following the dream that you're following, especially when you're young, it never occurs to you that you can't do it. I did get a lot growing up. I got you're a magician, so what's your real job? I got that for a while. Yeah. But then, somewhere in my 20s, a switch flipped and people stopped asking me that question altogether. And I think it's because they looked at me and they said, there is no way this mofo is doing anything else with his life. He's a magician. That's what he does. He's on stage. You can see that. And that just, I think that it was because I had these great mentors from when I was, like I said, Joe Lantieri, Jim Sisti, David Garrity, these people who are local magicians. You may not never know their names, but, Jim Sisti he's the magician at Quasi Amusement Park. He's worked Quasi for something like 15 years, some massive amount of time. He was one of the best restaurant magicians. He wrote the book on restaurant magic, literally. And I got to meet all these people. And I went to Tannen's Magic Camp when I was 14. Which is like freaking like a real life Hogwarts, 150 magicians, 50 instructors from all the world. That's where I met David Copperfield, Chris Angel. I met all these people there because they were teaching there. And it never occurred to me this wasn't a job you could have. But they instilled in me. They're like, you better be open to other stuff. Like, don't think that you're just going to be a magician for a long time, because there's a lot of people who can't just be a magician. Yeah. And that's why running a Renaissance fair came up. That fell in my lap. 12 years ago. Basically, I was an act at the Ren Fair at another version of this fair. The owner comes up to me. He says, my general manager is a piece of expletive deleted. He is not doing a good job, and he's terrible at running this thing. I see how you work. I see that you just have a good presence. You can talk to people, work with people. How do you feel about being a general manager? And I told him, I said, I'd love to, but here's the problem. I need my own team. Because I wasn't going to work with other people that I didn't trust, that I didn't know, because a lot of those people were doing the job in not the best way. And so he said, okay. And so then we created the Midsummer Fantasy Renaissance Fair, and that's where we've been now for 12 years since then, So that's a long way of saying something about little me. I took you through the whole process, I guess. Sorry.
You can tell, though, when some people are destined to be that one, like, in a good way. Like,
oh, yeah.
Then you can tell you have it already, not ready, but.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's you beat your head against the wall, right? Because because I want to do stage magic my entire life. Mm-hmm. If someone looked at me tomorrow and they said, you can no longer run Renaissance fairs, however, you can take your illusion show and tour all around the world, I'd be like, all right, sign me up. I'll put the people in place, make sure those fairs don't flounder, but I'm out, But if someone looked at me and said, and I know this because I was presented with this once, they said, listen, if you want, you can make a fairly good living doing this thing, but you're not going to be able to be a magician full time. And I said, then I can't do it. I can't do that. I'd rather make okay money being a professional magician than make great money not doing it.
Yeah.
And what's nice about running Renaissance fairs, is that you get an opportunity to do some. When you run a thing, you can put crazy stuff on the stage.
Mhm.
In past years, I've escaped from a 14-foot tall burning stake,
Mhm.
being surrounded by wooden logs. I've been chained 30 feet in the air with fireworks strapped to me.
Oh my God.
With someone strapped underneath me. Also strapped fireworks, Wick, my performing partner, for a long time. And we, when fireworks lit up, we were human fireworks. This is stuff that I would never been able to afford to do on my own.
Mhm.
But with the fair, I have a team of people where it's like, what's the weirdest thing we could do to get up on stage? I know. Let's put us in a cage with a bunch of fireworks pointed at us. And if we don't escape from the cage and from our restraints, we will get covered in fireworks pointed right at our faces. And we did that, I got performer friends of mine. I said, hey, how do you guys feel about being chained to a grate because fireworks is a big thing. This is right around 4th of July. So we'd find a lot of different ways to use like the legal fireworks in Connecticut. And I'm like, how do you feel about being chained to a grate? If you don't escape, the fireworks are going to shoot right up onto you. And I had 4 performers, Sasha, the Fire Gypsy, Paulo Garbanzo, Wick, and myself. And we're like, yeah, that sounds fun. Let's do that. Yeah. And that's the other part too. You find people as nuts as you are, as bonkers as you are, to do this kind of stuff. And I think that's, if you're talking about business, man, that's the goal.
The good thing is when you throw all these amazing, you can start with one amazing idea, and you got 3 or 4 people throw in extra ideas and try and add to it. If you're like me, if I do something, the next time I have to somehow top it.
Yeah.
Until I can't top it anymore.
Absolutely.
You must be up there with Jackie Chan with life insurance policies, huh?
My wife would disagree. She's like, keep him alive. He's still got to pay the rent.
I was telling John, one of your acts, part of the act is spitting fire.
Yep.
And we were joking about it. We're asking if everyone's ever lit a cigarette with your.
So fire eating, absolutely. Fire breathing, it just doesn't last long enough, but I'll eat fire. And I've had people come over and light pipes off of my torches, and that's always fun. And that's the thing too, finding people who are willing to go that extra step with you. And I made the joke about it about my wife, but my wife, Bella Greenwolf, is part of my regular stage show.
Mhm.
And she is now, since being with me, initially it was just like, okay, we're going to be working in the illusions together, but now she eats fire and now she breathes fire as well.
She brings it, and she does it with you. It's
She will
intertwine with it.
Although, and I love this part because this year she'll be doing other fairs with me doing that stuff. This year she'll do the nighttime show with me, and she'll do that. But the daytime shows I have to do solo because she's branched out. She says, you know what, my friend is the director of the script, Keith Vermonti. He back in 2020, when we were going to do the fair a couple of years ago, we had a script ready, and he looks to my wife Bella. He says, "You ever thought about being a part of the script?" Because we're one of the few fairs that has a totally original world. Midsummer Fantasy Renaissance Fair, we created a world for the fair. So, because we're a lot of D&D nerds, let's be honest.
Mhm.
So, because of that, we created this entire mythos. That we have an offshoot series. There was a web series that was offshoot done called Wardens, and the story always builds on the previous stuff. And in fact, so my wife Bella is playing the queen of the Shires, playing the queen of the entire kingdom, and it's the first. She's actually playing a character that had another person play the role 10 years ago. But she looked kind of like the person who was there 10 years ago. The character was an elf, and the character doesn't age, and so she looks kind of like the previous actress who played the character, and she wanted to act. And so my director said, "Do you want to do this?" And she's like, "I don't know." And I remember me saying, "I'm like, I don't want you to do it. I'm gonna have a partner. I'm gonna be all myself on stage." But she wanted to do that, and she wanted to go off there, so she's gonna be queen for the fair, which is just crazy, and a whole bunch of stuff because we have, like I said, we have an original script, and this year the script is just it's been sitting, and we've been working it now for a couple of years because you get a little bit of time
Yeah,
to work
definitely.
it. And I'm so excited by what's coming out of this. The scripted cast, because listen, I give all the credit to Renaissance Fairs just getting up and running.
Yeah.
It's hard business to make an event work. But if I have to hear one more damn story about Robin Hood or King Arthur, I'm going to bash my brains in.
Yeah.
I can't. Like God, there's so much more to medieval and Renaissance literature. Like, can we not? But that's my own thing. So that's why we do fantasy stuff. So then we can have elves and dwarves and orcs and all this kind of weird stories and worlds and fairies and stuff. So that's where we get in with all that.
You're actually the only Renaissance fairs I've ever been to. It's just like,
Well, there you go.
it's just I'm sure the other ones are really good, really
Oh,
nice.
I can tell you some amazing ones that are going on, and
I just,
yeah.
But
I think for me, because there's some that we do work. Actually, a new one that opened this year named Kingdom Fair over in New York. It's about an hour or so away. We work with them. We're promoting them because we're not going on right now. They're going on right now, and they're promoting us. The Stratford Shakespeare Festival is a one day fair that they go on.
I went to the first one last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember you were there.
Yeah.
Shakespeare Approved was there.
Oh yeah.
A couple other acts I don't remember.
Oh, that was great. You've got you had Taliesin Phoenix there. You had Knights of Gore there. You had some really, really great acts, and of course, Not in the Face Productions, which is the fight crew.
Mm-hmm.
They were also there. It was a great one day fair, but these fairs work together, and we are all trying to get each other to bump each other up, because every business person I've talked to, this idea that you've got to be uber competitive and you've got to be cutthroat with your other competition is a myth, and it's a toxic lie that's been created by, let's be honest, mainly white straight males. Again, let's be honest, we know what it is. We know what it is. We get it. I'm two of those three. I'm two of those three things. So I know that I'm part of the problem, but. It's just this toxic, kill or be killed attitude, and a rising tide raises all ships, man.
Yeah.
Especially now, there's nothing. So many people had to close, so many fairs had to close. So many, I'm a 3rd degree black belt in Tang Soo Do, and I work at a dojang. We call it. That's our term for a school because it's Korean. A dojang in Waterbury called Bodwin Academy of Karate. And I don't work there. I volunteer my time. I train there and I teach there. And, so many schools closed during the pandemic. And we had to come up with ways to keep us open, especially since just before the pandemic, our Grand Master actually passed away.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
Too, yeah.
Oh my God, it was a whole thing. So none of the other schools were we weren't fighting with each other. We weren't being well, we're going to, the ones that closed, we felt really bad about. But, and we tried our best to keep everybody moving and keep everybody running, but it was really, really hard. It's the same thing with Renaissance fairs. So many fairs closed their doors because 2 years off, it drained them completely, because there's little expenses that people don't always realize with running a business. And if you don't run your own business as of right now, or you're wanting to get into it, just know that even if you aren't doing nothing, if you're running a business correctly, there's expenses going into it, it's hard to put everything on hold and you're still paying a website fee, or you're still paying market, whatever it is, ad fees or licensing or insurance or whatever it is you got to pay for. And some of these fairs, keeping that going for a couple of years, it's just, just took them out.
Drains them out.
Oh yeah. It was close to us too. We're not going to lie. We were close to it, but we, by doing the event in 2021, we did things. We worked, the government finally helped out for a change, which is always nice.
Yeah, it helps.
Let me tell you, being a magician when you could not perform for groups for a while, I started doing virtual shows, but that was later in the game. Finally to have the government look at gig workers and say, oh, you folks are people too.
Yeah,
How awesome is
exactly.
that, right?
Yeah.
So that was helpful. But honestly, at the end of the day, it was us going, okay, how bad do we want to keep this going? And the answer always needs to be yes. That's the thing. You can't waffle. You can feel like, I don't really feel like doing this. I don't, you can have your days.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to have their days.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, you've got to be, is this worth keeping going? Is there a legacy here? Is there something that means something to me? And I think that if you're not just doing it for the money, if you're not just doing it because you think you have a skill, That's, you know, if you got to enjoy some part of it. And I think that's something that our fair, and Found Artifact Entertainment, the company that runs the fair now, that's something we're always striving for, you know. And I see that there's a lot of there are some fairs out there that they're money grabbing. They're just going for the money, and they've got the money to do it too. They got the money to do it, man. They, you know, good for them. They can spend $500,000, and if they have a bad year, they can be $500,000 in debt. I go $500,000 in debt, I'm just gonna cry myself over in a corner.
Done.
Yeah, nope. I think if I go $5,000 in debt too much, I'm just gonna go cry in a corner, just
I
like
know.
I'm really okay.
I know.
Yeah.
I keep pennies in a cup, so
Yeah,
like I'm just like
That's
I can't imagine like losing so much money, you know.
yeah. You know, I mean, I wish I could not designate myself as a small business, but we're small businesses.
Yeah,
That's how it
exactly.
goes. you
That's
know?
why another reason why I have you on, because like, you know, obviously you got your restaurants, your bars, other places. People forget musicians are small businesses,
Yeah,
magicians, comedians.
absolutely.
You know, they're all small businesses.
Yeah,
So they forget like they count, and like I want people to know the faces behind.
yeah.
You know, like it helps.
I mean, how many things can we pull from, you know, how many things can a restaurant pull from a performer who's got a good TikTok presence, who's got a good Instagram presence or something like that? You know, you look at what they're doing and how are they doing it right. Sure, maybe you can't do a really cool visual piece of magic, but can you take like the style of like the way they're writing or something? Can you work with that and put that into your own business and make that work? Because yeah, all of it's the grind, you know. I don't know if I like, there's a you know, the term hustle culture, right? Like
Yeah.
the term of like the, you know, living for the hustle. I don't know if I like that as much, because that means you've got to run every day until you're dead.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of little succeeds, like succeeding in little ways, little successes, little succeeds. What's wrong with me? It's been a long day.
Yeah.
But little successes, and maybe aiming towards that. And if you can't do it that day, you know, maybe sometimes you can't do it that day. You got to remember to take care of yourself in that sense. But the big thing is just, you know, making sure that you keep looking at that next goal. And it's a little different from hustle culture, because if you're just living just like, let's see how much work I can do today, you're like,
Yeah.
your priorities are ass backwards, man.
Yeah, they definitely forget, you know, what
Yeah.
what the actual purpose of
Yeah.
life in general. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a Simon Sinek, who great business thinker, and he's got why. I think his first book was Start with Why, and it was a great book. He's got a Why Leaders Eat Last. Try saying that 5 times fast. He's got a couple of those, and the first one is Start with Why. His whole thing is like, if you talk about what your company does. You know, we're Renaissance Fair. We've got 20 acts from all over the country, and we've got an original script, and we've got 60 vendors and all these things. That describes every other Renaissance Fair in the game.
Yeah.
It doesn't talk about what is. But if you talk about why you do what you do, you know, why do we do that? Because we want to inspire imagination. Everybody who walks through the gates. We aren't looking for the most expensive show. We're not looking to have the biggest show. We're the only fair, you know, one of the only multi-weekend fairs we don't have a joust. Initially, it was because we couldn't have a joust on our field, because our grounds, the people we rent from, they're you know, you've been on Warsaw Park, St. Joseph's Church, great people, but they used to have a fair on there that did things very poorly, and they had a joust on there, and the horses got out,
Oh.
and it tore up their ground, and they're like, listen, we can't have a joust on here, so we had to think differently about it, and we said, okay, well, let's have a giant, large steel melee. With a choreographed melee with a bunch of people on the field, and we've continued that tradition every year of having a big grand melee at the end of the day. And why did we do that? Because we weren't just looking like, okay, well, we can't do the big show, so I guess we won't do it. I don't know. No, it's like we want to inspire imagination, and when you look at things like, you know, you watch, like, you know, again, we talk about Lord of the Rings or any of these fantasy films, you know, you look at these big epic battles between two sides clashing and coming together, and that's what we wanted. That inspired us, and so we want to inspire others. And so I think when you find what that why is for your business, you really end up defining. You can go in so many different directions, you know. For me, I have a different why for why I do what I do. You know, I love magic. I always have, but I feel like magic can be magic's an art form. You know, it's like singing. It's like painting a picture. You can create something with magic. And how do you do that? How, you know, can you do that by doing like, pick a card, here's your card, hey, you're an idiot. Like, you know, you can't really do it.
Exactly.
So how do you do it differently? And for me, it's I tap into my Irish roots. Like I said, for those who don't know, like I said, I wear a kilt. When I perform, I have face paint that talks about my Celtic heritage. And I tell stories about my ancestors, about the Celts, and about ancient Irish. The Irish came over to America with their big illusion show, Celtic Magic. We talk about all this stuff. And that, for me, makes it real. I still do flashy stuff. I can sit out here and I do flashy card stuff, and I love it. I love doing that stuff. It's fun. Mm-hmm. But everything has that little bit of tinge of that tinge of this Irish influence for me. And it really, I hope to think, makes me different than the other acts out there, the other people out there performing. So I feel like that's, you know, it comes back to the thing of like, find your why. Yeah. Why are you running a business? Are you running a business because, I don't know, people would buy it? Like, that's your reason, it's going to dry up, you know? It doesn't matter how good. Listen, you can only sell so many Snuggies. All right. Yeah. And I got a Snooty. I got like someone built like they made like a hoodie blanket.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Right? I got mine. I love it. I'm not buying 5 of them. Nope. Like that's like there's a certain market saturation. So you got to find what's the next thing. In order to do that is go back to the basis of what why is. And although I have my issues with Apple, their why was so well defined back in the 80s.
That's true.
You know, everything they do, they wanted to think differently. That was their big why, right? And so how did they do that? You know, and that's where you went into the design of the products or how they were making them and all this stuff different than the other computer out there. So that comes back to with us. Like we try to do things differently because we want to inspire imagination with our fair.
That's inspiring right now how you said about the why with the Apple, because even though Steve Jobs, like, you know, people have their, you know, controversy with him.
Oh, yeah.
The biggest line that always stays in my mind that I love, he always says, never stop innovating. Never stop imagining of doing different things, because that's what it is. I feel like people recycle everything, and I'm inspired by you right now because you said, hey, I'm passionate about my craft. What can I do to make it different, unique, so that way people can still keep coming? And that's what we need to continue doing. But in this day and age, people's like, I'm just going to copy him. I'm going to copy that. Why not stand out?
Happens so much in the magic world too, because, you know, a lot of times here's a little bit of the magic inner world that people don't want to know about, but magic, you can go out and buy tricks. You can buy tricks. You go on TikTok, you can see a bunch of people. There's a trick on TikTok that got real big where they took a playing card and it turned into a wristwatch. And beautiful trick, looks lovely to look at. Everybody did it the exact same way. They all went out and bought it and did it the exact same way. Like, this is going to take not a lot of time. Boom. And they did the same thing, exact same way. And I never bought it. I never bought that trick because I couldn't look at that trick and go, how can I make it different? Nothing in that like sung to me. Mm-hmm. So I didn't use that trick. Not saying it's not a good trick, but it didn't mean anything to me personally. And, you know, I do tricks that have been done forever. You know, I do something called the linking rings, which has been done for centuries. In fact, that's where my angle is that I, you know, by reading and researching this, that they did it. You know, there's some aspects it possibly was done in ancient Ireland. You know, versions of this piece of magic. I'm like, oh my god, that I want this. And there's a lot of comedy in it because I'm a wise ass. So like that's for me. Like that's for me what I want to do. So I think generally at the end of the day, yeah, you've got to you can both innovate and you can play in the sandbox you're given. And I think, like, look at Apple. Apple made computers. Then they went on to make phones. They want to make music players. Then they want to make phones. Then they killed the music players. but like, they went on to do all these things, and they found the sandbox. And then when they were like, I want to try this thing, they jumped to another sandbox. And I think, crossing fingers, that's why I was able to run a Renaissance fair, because I started off as a magician, and I said, how do I do this differently? And I did that differently for long enough that someone said, hey, this guy does stuff differently. Maybe I'd want to see his take on like a Renaissance fair. Okay, cool. Let's let him do that. You know, I mean, I even host karaoke once a week. I do it
at Highland Brass, right?
Highland Brass Company, Waterbury, Connecticut, and I shameless plug. But I do that once a week, and the reason why I started doing that was because in fact, this was just after this is way before I was even married. I got dumped by my girlfriend of like 3 years. So many weird things happen with me and I swear to God, I'm in I love my relationship now. Okay, just so you know, 8 years, we're still going strong. And it's weird, which is always a good thing. But like when I started off, like I got dumped, and then a couple days later, my brothers said, "Hey, we're gonna go to Crazy Joe's in Naugatuck. It's not even around anymore."
Oh, yeah.
And they said there's a karaoke night, and I went to karaoke, and there was a guy there running it. His name was Angus Nicholson, and Angus was a great guy, cool dude. He knew I did magic. You know, I was a younger guy at the time. I was like 19, 20, and he says, I don't think I was allowed to be in there. It doesn't matter. Point is that I was there. I was there doing karaoke, and he goes, you really got a good voice, and you really have a good energy, and I know you like doing magic on stage. You know, you like maybe you'd want to host karaoke. And that's what happened is that he started teaching me how to do karaoke, and I learned about sound. I learned about all this stuff. I'd always learned about some of this stuff from theater, but he taught me about how to mix sound, how to make singers sound better, how to find all this different stuff. And then he didn't want to run his company anymore. He was tired of doing like little things. And so I started running, multi-class entertainment. And I became, and I started running karaoke shows. And I've got a team under me of folks who, if I can't do the show, they do karaoke shows. But that's because somebody saw, hey, he does stuff in a way I've not seen before. He seems like he would enjoy doing this. And then we started doing it, And I still go to karaoke shows sometimes, the other hosts, and I go, just stop it. I want to just go up there and just help you with your sound. And it's got to be a thing. If you've ever been to a show, like you've ever do a live show, if you know how to mix sound and you just listen to like there's not enough guitar there. It's not enough guitar there. That guy's playing nope, he's not. You can't hear him. Just like the sound mixer going, you just turn it up. Gain is not volume. All right. Anyway, sorry. Anyways, that's a different thing. That's an audio joke for the audio nerds. Anyways, but it's all of us. But no, I really do think that you can take that innovation and people notice it. I think that's the thing that comes across as it too. It's why I'm a small business podcast. Maybe I'll get killed for this already out the gate. But like, if you're doing something with one of these, like I said, Tupperware before, Avon, Tupperware, even all these kind of these. I don't want to say
me personally,
certain shaped. I don't want to call it that because I could be sued, but a certain shape of a scheme. If you were to make a scheme in a certain pointy shape, this would be that. Yep. And I'm like, you better bring something so different to that game that I don't want to just roll my eyes when you invite me to yet another one of your parties. Knock it off. Yeah. I don't care how good your hors d'oeuvres are.
Yeah, I'm actually doing.
I like hors d'oeuvres.
I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed.
Yeah.
I can eat them all day.
Yeah, it's true. I can't argue that point.
Yeah. I'm actually doing the hardcore suite punk rock flea market in I just drew a blank in July on the 17th. Actually, at Hardcore Suite Cupcakes in Sellington, and it's the reason why they call it a punk rock market. It's do yourself. It's anti-corporate. It's just they don't want nothing against people who do Tupperware or that kind of stuff, but they just don't. Me personally, I'm not a fan of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, man. How many times do I need to see people selling leaf guard like gutters? Yeah. Like I was at the Mohegan Sun at a tattoo convention. Great tattoo convention by Grace.
Yeah.
But there was a leaf guard like seller there, and I'm like,
what are you doing here?
I'm like, I guess tattoo owners. There's plenty of homeowners who have a lot of tattoos, I suppose. But like, wow, weird out there. But that's why that's why I like Renaissance fairs. A lot of Renaissance fairs are like, you can't just sell other people's stuff. You got to be able to craft your own things. Or if you sell something, it better be something that you found that nobody else is selling or tapping into. And you can't have any kind of corporate stuff like that. So yeah, I do. I guess in some ways, Renaissance fairs, they do have a bit of that punk rock vibe too, because it's like you gotta dress up. So already the people who like, oh my god, look how cool I am! I'm selling pure romance parties or whatever. It's like great, but like now you got to dress up and you've got to act kind of in a little bit of a character. It keeps away some of the rabble. We'll say that much.
And a lot of the people who dress up like cosplaying, they make their own clothing and like they sew it and. I could never do something like that.
It's it's either you put the skill into making it work, or you find the people who can. And that's a nice thing. Go to a Renaissance fair, You can find all these people who make these clothes. They do leather working. They do, you can buy full suits of armor. Some of these, like, it's crazy the stuff that they've got going on. Stuff that I couldn't even imagine to do, But you find the right people to do it, and they take the ball and run with it. So.
I've seen it at some year fairs too.
Absolutely.
It's just like, see, actually all of it. It's I see it there.
Absolutely. There's I probably own about 22 or 24 kilts at this point. I own a lot of kilts. Some I can wear right now, some I can't because I put on a little weight.
I get that.
Gotta have your lighter, gotta have your smaller kilts, your larger kilts, Well, I have like 3 sizes of show kilts just in case, and some of them are adjustable. So I do my best. But those, again, same thing. Those kilts, man. These people like Verilas and UT Kilts, American Highlander. These kilt sellers, these kilt makers, they just try to innovate and create these weird things. You don't think about kilts. You're like, it's a kilt. It's a dress. Like, what are you doing? It's a skirt. But they do some amazing things. Like, I got so many pockets on this thing. It's crazy. I love this kilt I'm wearing right now. But like, that's the kind of stuff that we try to bring in. And like, how do you make something different that's been around for centuries?
Yeah.
So I love that stuff. That's why I love those like hardcore sweets bakery.
Yeah,
they're
amazing.
awesome. I love them so much.
His story is even funny too, because he was in the band 100 Demons, and he actually, the reason he left because it was so popular. He left to focus on cupcakes.
Yeah,
that's so crazy.
They won Cupcake Wars.
Yep.
They were on all these other Food Network TV channels, shows, and just like when they have events, Madball is there. There's their 100 Demon band members are there, and they still have like the punk community coming out and like supporting them.
Oh yeah.
Like look at Hatebreed. They had their own beer made with Witch Doctor Brewing and Sellington, and all the punk bands came out and just to help support them. Yeah. But obviously, normal people like us, we went as well. Obviously.
Oh yeah, but I mean that's you gotta. I mean that's the thing too. You're creating a community that hopefully you can grow and be able to move outward with. I mean, for me personally, I hired acts that I brought in from other parts of the country, and because of that, I'm now I'll be spending the first month and a half of my year in Florida performing at the Brevard Renaissance Fair down there. I perform down there for a month and a half. I perform, I'm from Minneapolis and Bozeman, Montana and Las Vegas, and I get to perform all these places because you make this community and you build it up. And maybe it's not the path where you want to go. I mean, Rob Zabrecki, who's a very popular magician now, especially two magicians. Like, if you've ever seen him, you never forget him. But he was a leader of a band. Yeah. You look up Zabrecki, you'll see that I can't remember off the top of my head, but he was a leader of a punk band. And the first thing that he did was that he was this kooky guy, and he realized there was going to be this downtime. And he was like next door to where this band was, where they were going to play in this concert hall, there was a magic shop. And he goes like, teach me a magic trick that I can do, like if I could do on stage, like if I was like in between songs. And they got on stage like that night or a couple nights later, and the power went out. And he did this trick, and he's like, and he had this trick that this guy like sold him. And he's like, who's got it? And he did it with a condom because it's the rock show, of course. So he's like, who's got a thing? Throw a thing. And there's someone threw thankfully a unwrapped condom on stage. I think it was unwrapped. Who knows? The story changes. But he made the condom disappear, and that started him on magic. Like that was his first magic trick. Was in the middle of this rock show doing making a condom disappear. And now he's a full-time magician who works the Magic Castle, and he's over on the West Coast, and he works for the magicians. Been on TV. It's so great. But like that's the stuff. Like if you have a community that just goes way out there, if you breed that kind of like creativity, innovation, then like you're gonna be inspired. You're gonna go in different places. So maybe that's what happens. Like, oh yeah, I'm a punk band, but then suddenly, okay, Cupcakes is good, and then you're like, oh, Cupcake. But then you take that sensibility over when you're doing the thing. You get like hardcore sweets.
Maybe he was sleeping and the Food Channel was on, and it's like, I want to make cupcakes.
See, when that happens to me, I just want to eat cupcakes.
I was just there actually this week. Actually, I went there and I picked them up. I picked like 6 of them.
Oh,
man.
so good.
Oh.
Bad. Stop it. I'm trying my best.
That was you? Oh, my God.
Yeah, that was me.
We knew who it was. He was the one in the parking lot, eating them alone, crouched over, just like, don't look at me.
I brought him to work with me. And I was like, here's like 6 of them.
He's like, this box holds 12. Shut up.
Yeah.
There's 6. Get 6 and like it.
I was working on something, and then one of the girls comes next to my office and says, hey, John, there's cupcakes over here. Nicole has them. Go over there and see her, all right? I ran there so quickly. Then I turned around. Cupcakes gone. I was like, where's Nicole? Oh, she took them home with her. And I said, like, who gave her the cupcakes? He was like, Chris. I was like, oh, my God.
That's not fair. That's not right. That's how you break a heart.
Yeah.
A heartbreaker.
I'll hook you up. I'll get you some.
Good.
I'll make sure.
We're mending bridges here on the podcast.
I just
bring it together.
I love that kind of stuff.
Have you ever heard of the King Richard's Fair?
Absolutely. I actually performed at the King Richard's Fair as part of the Wonder Show. I was an act under John Stetson, who basically brought in other performers when he couldn't do it there. And I performed there in 2008, 2007, one of those years, long time ago. And great people worked there, wonderful acts worked there. In fact, one of my favorite acts of all time, Jacques the Whip-Air, who's a friend of mine, he works there. Mm-hmm. And you want to talk about someone like that? There's a guy who's come from a circus family, who actually works for NPR. He works as a host, an announcer for NPR, and then also he has this crazy show where he does this whip stuff. And now he's got a TikTok following. He's in the millions and millions and millions, and he's followed everywhere. And now he's going to go full time, with being full time performer. And that's the kind of stuff that matters. Like that's what drives me. I love it. I love it so much.
I love people. Sorry, John. I didn't mean to cut you off. I love people like that.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Have you met, I don't know if you remember them, the Washing Wenches? They are by far my favorite act. I didn't think they were going to make it through the pandemic, but like you said, they got millions of followers on TikTok because they were one of the hugest hits.
Yep. The Washing Well Wenches, Danielle DuPont, I believe I want to say her name right, is the one who runs them. She has 7 or 8 teams that go all over the country, and it's an amazing show, and they're so smart. I wish I got to actually interview them for my podcast many moons ago, and when I was down in Texas performing, and man, she is just. There's such a great subtext with that show because it's funny and it's bawdy, but it's about women empowerment and it's about owning your own presence and being raised at the same time. I love it. So yes, I recommend it highly if you ever get a chance. Washing Well Wenches.
I'll have to check it out because I never heard of it until just now.
Oh yeah,
myself. So.
Oh yeah, no, check them out on TikTok and on YouTube. Highly recommend it. When I went the first and second and third time to the show, I always see all their shows. Always tip them. I'm gonna be honest with you. You see me, I'm tan, but they managed to make me blush. You know how hard it is to make someone tan blush? They made me blush. Good. I couldn't stop laughing. They know how to work the crowd. It's amazing. It's an amazing show. And Chris, when you get a chance, watch it. You will not be disappointed.
I'll check it out. That's why one of the things I started on my Instagram and Facebook. It's how I learned about half the things I like now. To play a lot of the restaurants I visit or the people I watch or performers I watch, should I say.
The people I watch.
I was like, that sounds kind of creepy.
From the bushes, just, hi, want to be on a podcast?
Yeah, that's what I did with Daniel here. I just messaged him on Instagram. We're like, hey, I got a podcast starting up. You want to be on it? And he was like, email me.
Yeah, it's like, they say on Instagram, like, oh, that's great. He's like, by the way, I'm at your window. What? No, okay. Good to see you, Chris.
He sent me the nicest email. I never once read someone use the word, oh, that's delightful. Like, what? I was like, okay, I gotta have this guy on my thing.
Well, that's why I try my darndest to be fantabulous at all times.
And I was like, hey, you want to be on this podcast I never started before or I never did before? He was like, yes.
He told me he was 100 episodes in, so I don't know why. It's fine.
Definitely.
Okay. But it has been a pleasure and honor. Are we good? I saw the sign, the high sign.
Yeah,
sure we're all good.
Actually, you got to do, selfless plugs wherever you are.
Of course.
Wherever you want or wherever you're going to be.
I will. I am going to be most recently, when this airs, I will be most recently at the Midsummer Fantasy Renaissance Fair in Ansonia, Connecticut at Warsaw Park. We're the last weekend of June, the first 2 weekends of July, and you've got 20 acts. You're going to have 50 to 60 artisan vendors. You've got a wonderful food court. We have a fully stocked pub with mead. If you don't know what that is, go check it out. 21 and over people. And there's a lot of interactive stuff for families of all ages. And in an original script written by Anthony Myron, directed by Keith Fermonti, with an amazing cast and crew. And I am so excited for this year. This is going to be the biggest year we've had. We are coming out of the pandemic swinging. So I hope folks come and check it out and enjoy us.
I'll definitely be there.
And that'll be at mfrenfair.com. mfrenfaire.com. And you can get your tickets.
And where else are you going to be? You got anything else going on?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to be going on. I'll be at the Capital District Renaissance Fair in Altamont, New York. That'll be the second weekend of June. I don't know when this goes up live, but it'll be not this weekend, but the next weekend.
Yeah.
I'll also be at Naugatuck Duck Day promoting the Midsummer Fantasy Renaissance Fair, but that might happen before you guys are there.
Today is about the 15th-ish.
Exactly. Oh, the 15th. Yeah. So probably that point.
We were there already last week.
It was great. It was a fun time.
It was amazing.
I loved it.
You put the best show on ever.
Thank you. A lot of ducks. It was great. So I'll be there. After that, I will be performing at a Moose Hillock. There's a camping resort up there. There's a bunch of shows up there. My God, just all over the place. And certainly I'll be back at Comics Mohegan Sun with Jim Spanato's Magic Matinee. I'll be there again. So if you want to check out any of those, you can follow me at Daniel Greenwolf on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. On TikTok. On Friendster, I don't care. MySpace, is it a thing?
Yeah.
I don't care. Just find me.
You know, it's funny because for a while I used to still get emails from Friendster.
Oh my God!
I was like, geez, this place still exists.
Yeah. Well, Justin Timberlake did something with MySpace, but who knows anymore?
Yeah,
Just keeps it locked in a box.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's gonna be May. Anyway, sorry.
You know, that's every end of April. I dread end of April because. All those all I see is his face for 2 weeks.
Listen, there's worse faces you can see out there. That's all I'm saying. Timby. I don't even know they call him that, but whatever.
Yeah.
Anyways, on that note,
exactly. Now, could people actually hire you?
Absolutely.
I assume so.
Absolutely. You want to hire me for private events, for corporate events? I've worked shows everywhere from private parties to recently UN dignitaries. I didn't realize I was doing that, but I was doing a birthday party. It was UN dignitaries.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've all the way up to Bank of America, History Channel. I've done TV spots. So I was in AMC's Dispatches from Elsewhere. I did a little quick spot on that, which was a series they did. So I'm all over the place. So
you did a documentary with the camp one, right?
Yep, Magic Camp. I was again, that was old me. I was 355 pounds. I lost the weight through diet and exercise, and that was old me, which is funny because I had to promote that movie as new me because that's how long ago it was between they came out. Yeah, but it was a lot of fun. That was but that's about Tannen's Magic Camp.
Yeah, and
honestly, that's my final plug. If you've got a kid who's interested in magic between the ages of 12 and 20. So all the way up to 20, you go to Tannen's Magic Camp, one of the oldest magic shops in the world, Tannen's in New York City, and it's a great camp. And that's where I kind of became the weirdo I am. It's one of the big places. So that's my other suggestion too. If you're interested in magic, go there. Learn
Perfect.
From the best.
Sounds good. I'll throw a plug for you too. Go to Highland Brass.
Yeah.
For karaoke
every Tuesday night. Yeah.
And I forget what time it starts.
Yeah, 9 p.m.
9 p.m.
Until we close the doors and kick y'all out to go get your Ubers and Lyfts.
Yep. I'm a promotion whore, so
I'm
I promote whatever everyone has. They can
love you forever for that. Thank you so much.
No problem.
This has been a joy, and I've talked most of the time.
It's
I'm
all
so
good.
Sorry in advance.
No, you're safe because you saved me, so you're good. You sent you started a president for it. President, as I can't talk.
Yeah,
I started a president. Oh God!
I'll let John speak for
Get
me.
him out here. Yeah,
he's the intelligent one.
No.
Clearly,
no, I'm not that intelligent.
I was gonna say, stop that now.
No, it's all good.
No,
I'm gonna say like Forrest Gump. I'm above average. That's about.
There you go. I'll take it.
Definitely.
I strive for mediocrity, so that's fine.
You got that right.
But thank you so much.
Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Lou from Royal Fox Studios, who you should contact to have a podcast.
Totes.
Yeah, exactly. You can find me on ctsmallbusiness.org, Instagram, Facebook, sometimes Twitter, and that's it.
There we go.
And actually, if you want to email me anything, chris@ctsmallbusiness.org. Anything, contact me. Thanks, Daniel. It's appreciated.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.